Thanks for asking me to come and talk today. And hello everyone, my name's Ian. It's funny, I was just wondering, how do I introduce myself? How do I identify myself to let you know who I am? You know, in different arenas I have to say different things. And then I started to think, well, what qualifies me to come here and speak today? And I guess, you know, my name's Ian Thomas, and my job title was as a project officer for Core Assets, Foster Care Associates. And I work a lot engagement and participation. I deliver training to foster carers, particularly around substance misuse and things like that. What I feel that qualifies me to be here is that I spent most of my teenage years in and out of prison. You know, I'm a recovering addict, so Class A drug addiction was a big part of my life as well, and care experience of about 8 years, you know, and from residential to foster carers. And I could write a book on foster homes. I've had enough to kind of, you know. And I really liked that last presentation. That was great, and I was thinking really hard, and I can relate to some of that stuff. And I was thinking, yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, that's what it is. And I get that a lot now. I think, yeah, that's what it is when I read research. And you know, from what I was getting, it was starting to work. And then we take the young person out of the environment, you know, and they kind of revert back to what they were doing before. You know, and last time I looked, there was 85,000 people in this country in prison at any given time. You know, and the government statistics say it's 27%. I believe it's half, and that's from someone who spent 3 years in prison, over 10 prisons. You know, and I'm care leaving myself. You know, and I've done rehabilitation programs in prison where we share and stuff. And we've nearly all been abused. We've nearly all been in care. You know, and I really don't think that's a coincidence. But generally speaking, when people are in prison, they conform. Why do they conform? Because they're getting the human fundamental needs met. They're getting fed, they're getting some education, you know, they're getting stimulated to a degree, you know, and when we get out, they offend, you know, and again, that's not a coincidence, is it? You know, and I guess, you know, I committed my, you know, I grew up, you know, a twin brother, sister, mum, dad, you know, family dysfunctional. Mum and dad had difficult childhoods, substance misuse thrown into the, you know, addiction, you know, and drug addiction, you know, and you know, and you know, I think let's not get lost in the symptoms now, because I don't think drug addiction has got a lot to do with drugs, you know, and I can explain that more. And I think for me, you know, I committed my first offence when I was about 8. You know, I stole a pack of cards that I couldn't have, and we didn't have much money. We were in a council house on the dole, you know, and all the kids around me had more, you know. So I think that affirmed feelings of less than, you know, and kind of, you know, and that was how I kind of got what I wanted. And I think, you know, as long as I can remember, you know, I just remember being confused, and my first feelings I could identify were fear. And you know, for one reason or another, my parents weren't consistent. In fact, they were consistently inconsistent, you know, and I think that kind of created quite a bad sense of self. So when it came to the time, I didn't have the internal tools that I needed to support myself, and I looked outside of myself to feel better, you know, and as an adult, if I fall over and hurt my knee and I kind of scrape it, you know, I'll put a plaster on it, some TCP, and I'll kind of, you know, set about healing that. You know, and the only reason I know how to do that is because at some point an adult, whether it be a foster carer, you know, children's home worker, school matron, you know, did that, put a plaster on my knee, you know. So you take that from the physical sense to the emotional sense. When I'm going through my most informative years, you know, and I'm being coached through them kind of experience where I create my internal resilience to life. You know, the adults around me are consistently inconsistent. In fact, they're off the wall, you know, and because they're suffering with what I'm getting. Do you see what I'm saying? The stuff that I'm developing. And so, you know, I didn't have the internal tools, you know, to that resilience. And when I felt, you know, then I became restless, irritable and discontent, you know. So I was always looking for a sense of ease and comfort, and I had to look for it outside of me, not inside of me, you know. And I guess that's probably attachment, isn't it? You know, theory somewhere in there. And that's how I break it down to foster carers, you know, and other young people, to try and see if they can identify with that stuff. You know, and I looked outside of myself in everything, you know, and you know, but different behaviours, you know, and my first addiction I think was stealing, you know, huge addiction. And it wasn't about, you know, financial gain, even though my mission was to get a couple of quid for 10 fags or a Freshers bar and a box of matches, you know. That wasn't about financial gain really, it was about, you know, getting and using and finding ways and means to get more, because it preoccupied me from me and what was going on for me at the time. you know, and I think it was a great way to sabotage foster placements, you know. And I like, you know, someone sort of said about, you know, the young people aren't, you know, investing into this these kind of placements that we were creating and the research and stuff. And I, you know, I think for me, you know, I had a huge fear and anxiety of loss and abandonment, you know, and rejection, you know, because that had been my experience. You know, my mum couldn't look after me for whatever reason, and that really hurt me. So, you know, when I start to invest in you and you become of value to me and you start to have substance, you know, the fear and anxiety of loss and abandonment and rejection is so great that sabotaging it is less painful, and I'm in control. Do you see what I'm saying? So I went through quite a lot of foster homes with that, you know, and that was like my destructive behaviour pattern. So stealing was a great way to sabotage your placement, create new pain to get rid of the current pain, and just kind of keep going and keep being distracted and not sitting with myself. And you know, and I mean, I kind of, you know, I took my first drug when I was 10, and you know, it didn't really do what I wanted it to do, or what it did when I was later on, you know, and that was about peer group. I like the whole thing about, you know, negative peer groups. I mean, that's massive, isn't it? That's absolutely massive for young people. And, you know, and I honestly think, you know, the biggest exit out of gangs, drugs, crime, prison, the biggest exit out of that stuff is strong mentoring with someone who's been there. You know, that therapeutic value of one person identifying with another. You know, because it's a language that is unspoken, but it's there, if that makes sense, you know. And it just comes across instantly, you know, and you know when you know, you know, you just know when you know when they know, you know, and they know when you know, if you know what I mean. You know. So, you know, and I guess, and for me, you know, I went into care at 9, and lots of domestic violence at home and all that kind of stuff, and just chaos really, you know, and it's just quite a sick household, you know, and I could, like, again, go into that, but, you know, we all know what that looks like really, and I think, and, you know, going into care was quite exciting. I mean, school was difficult. I think that, you know, the education system just didn't suit me, you know, and if I say that we're all the same, then you're all going to go, well, of course not, Ian. So, you know, but we teach everyone the same, you know, and it didn't tailor what I needed, you know, and I hope it's getting better, you know, but I remember a shelf of books about Scottish clans, and you read the books, and the further you went down the shelf, the harder the reading got, and your reading supposedly got better. Well, I was here on this shelf, and everyone else was here, and I remember the teacher going, well, what are you doing on this book here? And she moved it from there to there, so reading went from really hard to impossible. And I made a conscious decision to not learn at school anymore. I remember making a conscious decision and thinking, well, this isn't going to work for me, you know, because you know, I'm going to fail at this, and it kind of confirmed that, and I guess that kind of contributed to my feelings of not good enough and not worthy, and, you know, and self-esteem, and that sense of self wasn't there. So, you know, to kind of, you know, to get rid of that, I'm looking outside of myself, you know, my behaviours are getting more extreme and, like, you know, more out there, and aggression, you know, was a good one, because if I was aggressive, it would keep you over there and wouldn't let you in, you know. And although I was in loneliness and isolation, you know, it felt safe because it was familiar, and it keep you away, you know. And just because you know, a lot of stuff that we do that's destructive, self-destructive and painful, you know, we do it because it's familiar, you know. And you know, I thought that everyone, do you know what, I honestly believe this, I thought that everyone got took to one side and said, listen, this is the secret for living life, but whatever you do not tell Ian, because I just felt so ill-equipped to live life. You see what I'm saying? You know, and I can see the ones nodding because they felt like that too, you know. And I remember asking a kid at school, I said, if they told you something and told you not to tell me, and he thought I was bonkers. You know, honestly, and then I realised that, like, he wasn't going to give it up, or there wasn't anything to tell, but yet I still felt ill-equipped and unprepared, you know, and I can still feel like that now sometimes, you know. And so I guess, you know, you know, with this start in life, you know, going into care, you know, negative peer groups, and, you know, absconding and aggressive behaviour, and, you know, and you know, and I started, you know, I got a good placement. I was in a residential home in Kent. I got a good placement, you know. It was they moved me to the Isle of Wight, and it was a really good placement, and it was quite intense. I had a lot of input, you know, and they put us in a school on the mainland in Southampton. There was 3 pupils and 5 staff members, and, you know, if a window didn't get smashed, we'd have a touch. Do you know what I mean? You know, we were absolutely, you know, we were just off the wall, and we look back at how we behaved, you know, but they just contained that, and they held us through that. And what I thought was, what I could see was, I you know, and I've gone from local authority to private, you know, and when I was in local authority, you know, I've been in care 2 years, and my longest foster home was 6 weeks. Before that was all residentials, you know. And I was on the child protection register, and I wasn't on the child protection register before I went into care, you know. So it was just like, and no one really knew what they were doing, I felt. And everyone would react, you know, and everyone was reacting to symptoms, because my anger, you know, was a symptom of my fear of abandonment and rejection and not feeling worthy of receiving love and all that pain. You know, that was my problem. A symptom of that problem was my anger, and people were reacting to my symptoms, you know. So then I'd react, you know, so they'd react to my symptoms, and then I'd react to their symptoms, because their problem was they didn't know what they were doing. Do you know what I mean? And their symptom was that they'd restrain me or do something like that. So everyone's reacting to symptoms and no one's identifying a problem. Does that make sense? Are you with me? You with me? Yeah. So, and I went into this foster home, and it was, you know, teen parenting, and it was like, you know, intense and therapeutic, which I hated. This was a time when every kid had to have a therapist, you know, and they wanted us to play with sand and draw pictures, and, you know, it was all a bit weird and hippie-ish, do you know what I mean? And, you know, I was just angry, and I just wanted to swear at everyone and show you how aggressive I was, because, you know, I was in pain, and you know, if you hurt people, you know, that's the truth of it. And you know, I was in pain, so I want to project that onto you. And the closer you get to me, the more it hurt me till I'd have to hurt you, you know. And I believed that everyone was out to hurt me, you know. And it was just fear. It was just fear. And but you know, I kind of got in mainstream school, and you know, I didn't get any GCSEs at all. You know, but in the eyes of society I failed, but for me it was a success, because, you know, when I came to that placement I couldn't sit in a classroom from the beginning to the end, you know, and I sustained some school with getting suspended on a regular occasion, but, you know, it was a success, because I can only compare to me, because only I've had the experience and had to contend with the things I've had to contend with, so how could you compare me to anyone else, you know, and I always wanted to be normal, and I am normal today, and I was normal then. Given the set experiences that I had in my life, I was just reacting, responding how anyone else who'd been through what I'd been through have. So I was normal, you know, and I tell that to young people now, you're normal, of course you're normal. You know, what's not normal? And I use that word loosely because it's a word that gets thrown around a lot, you know. You know, and that placement broke down because the intenseness kind of, you know, reduced, and another placement came in, and I got jealous, and that represented so much for me, and, you know, and the placement broke down, you know, and then as soon as I left that placement, I started smoking cigarettes again, gambling, negative peer groups, you know, and it's about pushes and pulls when you're a young person, you know. A positive, you know, inviting family, you know, is like a positive pull, and a negative peer group is like a negative pull, you know, and it's your pushes and pulls as a young person. What influences have you got around you? Because adolescence is a bit like in a ping pong machine, isn't it? You're just going anywhere and everywhere, you know, and it's just like, because you know, it's a world of reacting and feelings and you know, body changing and puberty and hormones and, you know, all that kind of stuff, you know. So, you know, and you need to be kind of carried through that. And I've worked with some young people now, and I've done some stuff around young people offending in the community and stuff. And a consistent thing is they don't have anyone in their life that they don't want to let down, you know. And I think that's a key thing for young people, you know. Because now, if I went out there and nicked a car, you know, and I'm not going to for the benefit of the tape, you know, I'd be thinking about all the people that I'd let down. You know, all the people that support me to be where I am today. And I carried this stuff into my adult life, you know, and I started drinking, and it gave me that ready brek feeling. I felt nice and warm and fuzzy, you know, and it kind of took that restless, irritable and discontent feeling away, and it gave me a slight sense of ease and comfort. But it wasn't at that time what I would consider self-actualization, you know, but that's what I was looking for in substance misuse. You know, I was looking to feel complete. And then when I took ecstasy, it made me worthy of receiving love. That's all I can say on it, you know, and it introduced me to a world of music and peer groups that were quite inviting, quite caring, you know, and all that stuff, you know, and that scene was really warm, and you know what, that gave me a sense of belonging, you know. It gave me friends, and drugs, you know, introduced me to crime, and then crime was a sense of income, another human fundamental need. You need to fund, you need to eat, man, you need a roof, you know. And you know, and all that came with that, you know, and I could talk about all that and what I did, but again, you know, we all know what that's about. I hope we do, to a degree. So, you know, and then obviously drugs progressed, and you know, I could give you a drug-a-log, you know, but I think for me, you know, I ended up sleeping in Brighton, you know, on park benches, night shelters, you know, shop doorways, you know, over £200 a day crack and heroin addiction. You know, I've been in and out of prison X amount of times. I was always on my way to prison, or just got out of prison, or, you know, methadone scripts, Subutex scripts, ringing the drug services, begging for detox, 18, I got let out of YOY, I went to local authority and said, look, I really need some help, and they said, we don't owe you anything, and they just turned me away, the duty on the spot, and I had nowhere to go and I had nothing, and I didn't want to leave prison. They let me out New Year's Eve, it was my first sentence, I got 4 months, I did 2, and I remember saying to this lad on the wing, I said, I don't want to go. As scared as I was and difficult it was, because I wasn't a brawler. I always looked like 5 years younger than I actually was at 18, so it was difficult to survive in a prison, and there wasn't really many white people, and that was massive, 3 white people on a whole landing. I came from Bournemouth, do you know what I mean? And I didn't want to leave, and when that door shut at night time, I felt content and warm. I felt safe. And I had my tobacco and the TV and my book. I thought everything's going to be all right for 12, 13 hours. And I got this sense of ease and comfort and this, this like blanket. And they became like my parent, and I was institutionalised. And let me tell you this, we grew up with young people get dragged up in the care system, right? And I know we're getting better at it. Yeah. I mean, for some reason, foster carers are more picky about picking teenagers, but they're nowhere near as bad as they used to be, or challenging. They're nowhere near as challenging as they used to be. So I don't know what this is about, but I had huge fear of abandonment, rejection. I didn't feel worthy of receiving love, all the kind of stuff I've been telling you about. And but when you take me, when I kind of rebel because I'm not getting what I need, you stick me in a courtroom and you condemn me, tell me how bad I am, and then you reject me from society and confirm the negative belief system I have about myself. And then it gets to when I'm 21 and I'm a full-blown heroin addict, and I'm saying to my drug counsellor on this program in jail, the solution is I need to spend the rest of my life in prison. That's what I told her. They gave me 3 years for a string of offences, and I stood in the dock at Crown Court, Lewis, and I'm thinking, I panicked. And I thought, you told me I was going to get a 6. And the barrister's happy, he's going, you've had a right touch. They assessed me for an IPP. Do you know what I mean? And I was disappointed, because I thought I had to spend the rest of my life in prison, because no one could hurt me more than I could hurt myself. And I was in that much pain, I hated myself, and I had no prospects. And if you kidnapped me and injected me with dirty syringes, made me eat out of bins, soup kitchens, incarcerate me, starve me, do all the things I did to myself, I'd have to kill you. So what point did it become up for the benefit of the tape? It's a figure of speech. But at what point did it become okay for me to do that to myself? When was it okay for Ian to? That's not a well man. That's not a well boy in a man's body. You see what I'm saying? And that's how lost I was. And I needed to get well, and I got on a program and I got some help through a charity that was in the prison, and they've just closed that program that's in the prison down. And that hurts me, because I'd probably be dead without that. And at 21 I went through this program and I had to write down examples and start getting honest and take a good look at myself. And what I learned was, that was I'm rounding up, that was the first time someone had said to me, what do you need and why are you doing the things you're doing? All the time in that jail, probation, local, no one ever said to me, why are you doing what you're doing, Ian? What do you need? Do you know what I mean? Because they were too scared I'd give them a list and it would cost them money probably, and that's the reality of it, isn't it? And I was thinking, someone said the government's short-sighted about, funding and stuff like that. And we look at adolescence and we think, God, it's all about immediate gratification. Think about your future. Well, how are we meant to think about our future when you're not thinking about our future? Do you see what I'm saying? There's something in that, isn't there? And that's really powerful for me. I got goosebumps when I thought of that. But, and to kind of round it up on a positive note, I got clean, I stayed clean, and I got on this program, and and I got honest, and I didn't have to go to prison again. I didn't have to get arrested again, and I got released, and I was like, 13 months clean and sober when I got released, and I'm sat in my cell and I can smell crack and taste it in the back of my throat, because that's how powerful addiction is, and addiction is like a cold. The problem of the cold is like the virus. A symptom of this cold is coughing and sneezing, and when we're coughing and we're sneezing, it's an attempt to make it better, isn't it? And when you're an addict or an alcoholic, or this severe attachment issues and all these posh words we throw around, when you got this thing, whether it's codependent relationships, drugs, pornography, shopping, stealing, football violence, you look at the 80s, there's always been something in it, all the football gear, it's an attempt to make it better, isn't it? And even if it's painful, it's getting rid of that current pain or that old pain. And pain has honeymoon periods, doesn't it? So But I got out of prison and I kind of did some work and with young people in the community, and I've got involved in fostering, and just to kind of, on a positive thing, I mean, I'm an upstanding member of society. I pay tax much against my better judgment, but I was quite keen to pay tax at first and make amends to society, and when I got a job I was hod carrying bricks on a building site and my hands were all mashed up and an absolute mess, but I loved it, and I always wanted someone to say, what do you do for a job? It's agency, but there's prospects. That was my answer. High vis, cement all over me, but I felt good because outside of getting clean and sober, the most kindest, loving thing I've done for myself is get a job. When I see placements break down for young people, the common theme is they're not in school or they're having issues at school because they've got no direction, they're not being mentally stimulated. A byproduct of direction is happiness. And I believe that, and if I had no job and nothing, I'd probably be selling drugs again, and that's just me being honest, because I need my human fundamental needs to survive, like we all know. And, I've been around the world, I've talked at conferences internationally, I sold everything I own, I went travelling, I ended up in a Jewish college in Israel, and they offered me a scholarship to become a rabbi. I'm not Jewish, so I had to leave. It was a big mistake. I just went for some free food and they got carried away, I've been to Palestine, I've backpacked, right through Israel, hitchhiking, talking in Japan, Canada, different conferences, and I'm at the moment trying to build a career of speaking and training and, and teaching and learning, and I think that, what the fact that we're all together here today and learning it is a big one. I really believe each one should teach one, so I know I've missed loads, and I know that, there's on the way here, there's the share I was going to do, there's the share I should have done, and there's the share I did, but this is what I've given you, and I don't plan it, I just ask for guidance. Do you see what I'm saying? And but if you have any questions, or I've got a card, you can email me, or, I'm willing to help. But thanks for listening to me.